Hello and welcome to the first Discursive Psychology Assessment online. So this is part one of the assessment seminar online, and there is a part two online as well. So for part one and part two, you will need to have access to the assessment brief, DP assessment data. This is Fear, Loathing and Prejudice in Blunkett's Backyard, the DP assessment prep worksheet, and it will be handy to have access to the workbook, and the workbook includes a glossary of common discursive devices. There's also a separate document on Blackboard with common discursive devices in there too, and you remember some of these from the DP workshop online anytime that we did before. So we strongly recommend that you do both parts of the DP assessment seminar, but do both the CA assessment seminars as well as the DP, so that you'll know which one you'll be best at. So here's an outline of what we're going to cover, and it is the same as the conversation analysis assessment seminar. So part one will be we're going through the assessment brief, and also we'll have a look at the reading list online. And in part two, we'll get started on the assessment data, and we'll carry on with this in the face-to-face session as well. So we're going to start writing up and structuring the report, how to do that as well. But we're also going to be looking at the assessment brief in part two as well. So the assessment brief, we'll look at this first, and as I said in the CA assessment seminar, this is a very important document. So with the assessment brief, you have got really detailed assessment guidelines for CA and for DP, whichever one you choose to do. And there's grading criteria for RMT level 5 qualitative, and there's also the university grading criteria for level 5 as well. And also, of course, there's all the other things about uploading your assessments and university policy, etc. And like I've already said, please do always keep the assessment brief handy whenever you're writing an assessment, because it's really useful to give you that help and to make sure that you're doing everything that needs to be done. So of course you've got your grading criteria that you can keep checking and seeing if you're doing all the right things, as well as assessment guidelines. So moving on. So you either want to choose to do your qualitative report on conversation analysis or on discursive psychology. So it must be one or the other for the qualitative report, task 1, but whichever you choose, you absolutely must use the correct data, because each one has got particular data. So the conversation analysis is the gossip about Jenny Ash data, so don't use that for DP, because DP is the fear, loathing and prejudice in Blunkett's Backyard. So do be aware that you don't get them mixed up, because really we won't be able to award you any marks if you've done your assessment on the wrong data. So it's 2,000 words for the qualitative report, and there's no 10% over, so we mark up to the 2,000 words. There are 3 sections in the qualitative report, whichever one you decide to do. So there's an introduction, an analysis, and then there's your summary and conclusions. Please make sure that you subtitle each section. It makes it a nice clear structure. It's easy to see where one section ends and then the other section begins. You'd be surprised at the number of students that don't do this, and it's difficult to know which section that you're marking sometimes. So the introduction is to show your in-depth knowledge and understanding about, in this case, discursive psychology. So provide an introduction to your selected method of analysis and introduce the data set and outline why it's important, why it's appropriate data for the analytic approach. So you're basically justifying why discursive psychology is the good way to explore this particular data set. And at the end, state your primary research question. And we'll have a look at research questions a little bit later on. So as you'll see from the grading criteria, we are looking for a detailed, accurate and concise outline of DP, and the data should be fully introduced in a concise manner in your introduction. And then the analysis is the big part, so 1200 words. So here you should present your analysis of the data, drawing upon existing relevant DP, in this case, literature to support your analysis. So key papers and key readings for each approach are provided on the BP module site in the reading list, but also aim to demonstrate independent study by including additional literature. Now, we don't expect you to have lots and lots of literature, as long as it's relevant literature to DP, and I would also use some of that, the key readings from the reading list as well. It's really important that that's relevant too. But it's not that we want reams and reams of it, but we want to see that you can engage with your data, with the literature as you're doing your analytical discussion. So what we're really interested in is how you analyse your analytical ability in discursive psychology, rather than your ability to search lots and lots of literature. So the summary and conclusion, 300 words, and in this section you should sum up the key findings of your analysis and provide a clear take-home message in terms of the implications of your findings. So it must be that you kind of, all the things that you've discussed in your analysis, you manage to bring them all together very concisely and assess the meaning. What does this mean? What do your findings mean? So please note that the above word counts are approximate for each section, but don't exceed 2,000 words on your qualitative report. So you could have a bit of difference. You might have 250 words in the conclusion, but then you might have 1,250 words in the analysis. So it's a rough estimate, but we've sectioned it so that this is like the appropriate number of words for you to do well at. So each section tries to aim for those number of words. So how will you proceed with the DP assessment? It's really, really important to engage with the reading and engage with the data as well. So do get very familiar with the data. So if you can, read the discourse analysis chapter in the core text, which is either Sullivan and Forrester or Forrester, the older version, or online there's chapter 6 by Willig, and this is Introducing Qualitative Research in Psychology, Adventures in Theory and Method. So you can actually, if you can't get access to the core book, you can still have the readings online. Discursive Psychology, Theory, Method and Applications by Wiggins 2017 is really good, and the whole book is available online. So I would encourage you to look at this book, because it does tell you everything you want to know about discursive psychology, all the way through the whole process, the data collection and the data analysis, and all about discursive psychology. Also, if you can access a copy of the seminal book by Potter and Weatherall, Discourse and Social Psychology, 1987. This will help you too. It's a very slim book, so it's not lots and lots of reading. So you don't have to print off the data, but do read it through slowly and carefully. Really engage with the data, get to know it well. Remember that DP treats talk as social action, so you'll be asking yourself as you're reading the data, what social action is taking place in the data. Read the paper Representing the Other, a discursive analysis of prejudice and moral exclusion in Talk About Romanies. This is very closely related to the data for the DP assessment. And then when you've read it, think about the data you're going to analyse in light of reading this paper. Also, read the other key articles posted on Blackboard too. And reread the data again. Work through it really carefully and code the data that relates to your research question. Identify discursive devices too, and any interesting points for analysis. So we're going to have a look at the reading list online for discursive psychology. So the module reading list is on the module homepage, and you'll see it on the left hand side as you go down to those boxes. So go onto the reading list, click onto the reading list. It might take a long time to get onto it and you might have to log in, but hopefully you won't have any problems. So you'll scroll down inside, there's two boxes, so you need to scroll down inside the box to get onto the qualitative readings. You'll go down past some quantitative readings and then you'll see the core textbooks, and then if you scroll all the way down past the conversation analysis readings, you'll get to some discursive psychology books. So this top one is a very good book that I've just talked about previously, the Sally Wiggins 2017 one, and also the Willig book is available online, so that's Introducing Qualitative Research in Psychology, Adventure in Theory and Method. So yeah, you can scroll all the way down past the books, and then you'll get onto some DP assessment material. I think you need to scroll down some qualitative books to get to the some sort of general qualitative books to get to the DP assessment material, and so do make sure that you look at some of these papers because they're very important and they will help you to understand discursive psychology. But also you'll see if you look down about from the third one, there's lots of papers that are relevant to the assessment data as well. And at the very bottom there's a paper about discursive psychology, and it's a really good comprehensive one. So if you prefer to read a paper to understand discursive psychology, this is a really good one to look at. So moving on then to activity 1 from part 1. So the same thing, after going through the key readings outlined previously, then make sure you go through really carefully your DP assessment data, Fear, Loathing and Prejudice in Blunkett's Backyard. Think about what's going on in the data and make notes about what you think is interesting and important, and if there's any discursive devices that you see, make a note of them. Very importantly, do make a note of the line numbers where you see interesting things, where you see discursive devices, and anything else that you want to make a note of. It's really important to be specific about the data, so get into the habit of referring to line numbers when you are talking about the data. So good luck with activity 1, and that's all for now, and I'll see you back for part 2 of the online assessment seminar anytime. Thank you.